Hello, kids! Welcome to our English class. Today, we are going to analyze literary text as expressions of individual communal values within structural context. Specifically, we are going to identify elements of poetry, appreciate the poetry presented, analyze the structural, biographical, historical, and sociocultural context of a poem, and share ideas and thoughts about significant concepts from the poem and relate it to your specific local identity or Filipino identity in general. But before going to our lesson, let us activate your prior knowledge through a quick talk. Reflect on your past experiences with poetry. What do you enjoy or dislike about poetry? Do you mind sharing it to the class? How about your favorite poem? Great! This time, let's check your prior knowledge about poetry. Try to match the following terms with the correct definitions. Ready? Let's start. This pertains to the repetition of similar sounds at the end of lines. Is it imagery, rhyme, rhythm, simile, or stanza? That's right, rhyme. It is a group set of lines within a poem, often separated by a space. Imagery, rhyme, rhythm, simile, or stanza? Correct, it's stanza. How about a comparison using like or as? Imagery, rhyme, rhythm, simile, or stanza? Very good, simile. The pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in a line. What do you think is this? Imagery, rhyme, rhythm, simile, or stanza? That is correct, rhythm. Last, it is the use of vivid and descriptive language to create pictures in the reader's mind appealing to the senses. Is it imagery, rhyme, rhythm, simile, or stanza? Great! It's imagery. Let's continue the fun by doing the next activity, the word challenge. Please look closely to the word puzzle. Find and write down all the words you can see in relation to poetry. Words can be found horizontally, vertically, diagonally, or even backwards. How familiar are you with the words you found in the puzzle? Can you define or explain any of the terms you found? Good job, kids! You did well in explaining your ideas. Now, let's work in groups and complete the graphic organizer. People say that poetry is a garden nourished by the soil of imagination and tended with the care of language's artistry. Please write your insights about this on the flower petals. You will then have to read your answers to the class. How did the concept map help you better understand the concept of poetry? It's so nice that you learned something about poetry through this simple activity. Poetry is a magic type of literature. It is rooted in the power of language to evoke emotion, transform consciousness, and shape our perceptions of reality. That is the reason why it is important to not only read a poem, but also to analyze it and decode its deeper meaning. And in order to analyze a poem, we have to understand the basic elements of poetry, which are form, imagery, line, sound devices, figurative language, and theme. Form refers to how the poem is put together, like its structure and design. This includes things like how it rhymes, the rhythm of the words, how the lines are grouped into stanzas, and how it looks on the page. We learned in your activity earlier that a rhyme is a repetition of similar sounds at the end of lines. Example: and from the high above, tune sounds of bells and angelus rings of peace and mercy, prayer it tells. The word bells rhymes with the word tells. Can you think of any other words that rhyme? That's awesome! Now, let's talk about rhythm. Rhythm is the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in a line. But what is a syllable? A syllable is the number of times you hear a sound of a vowel when pronouncing the words. Example: dog. The word dog only has one syllable: dog. The word teacher has two syllables. It consists of two vowel sounds: T-cher, teacher. How about the word significant? How many syllables does the word significant have? Correct, 4. The word significant has 4 syllables: sig, ni, fi, cant. Significant. This time, we are going to learn about the stressed and unstressed syllables. In words that have more than one syllable, one of the syllables is pronounced more strongly than the others. We call this syllable as stressed syllable. Like the word teacher, we say T-cher. So we pronounce the first syllable more strongly than the second syllable, teacher. We do not say teacher, but we say teacher. But how do these help in forming the rhythm of a poem. Let's see. Here, we have an excerpt of the poem First Colors by Maya Anthony. Let's see the stressed and unstressed syllables of the poem and how they create rhythm. The words in green are stressed syllables. Banners flying, streets alive. Colors dancing, spirits high. Let's read the poem again. Banners flying, streets alive. Colors dancing, spirits high. Did you see how the rhythm is created by the stressed syllables? Next element is imagery. It is a descriptive language that appeals to the senses, creating vivid mental pictures and sensory experiences for the reader. This means the writer chooses words that help you imagine how things look, sound, feel, smell, or taste. Example: in twilight's hush, where shadows play. In twilight's hush, this appeals to our sense of hearing. We can imagine how silent and peaceful the atmosphere is. Where shadows play, where you can see only the shadows of the things around, like trees and the owl. Another element is line. It is the basic unit of poetry, often characterized by its length, rhythm, and arrangement on the page. Let's look at this poem by Dr. Jose Rizal titled To Josephine. By looking at how this poem is written, we can see that it has 8 lines. Rizal dedicated this poem to Josephine Bracken, an Irish woman who went to the Pitan accompanying a man seeking Rizal's services as an ophthalmologist. Let's now talk about sound devices. The techniques such as rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, assonance, consonance, and onomatopoeia that create auditory effects enhance the musicality of a poem. You learned about the rhyme and rhythm. Now, alliteration is when words near one another repeat the same sound at the beginning of the words. Example: silent stars softly shine, silver streams serenely scribe. The repetition of the s sound make the lines stand out to the reader. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds from anywhere in the word, not only at the beginning of a word. Example: waves rave, caves echo. Do you hear the repetition of the v sound? Another example is, I reminisce on the stress I caused. What do you think is the consonant sound that stood out in the line? Very good! The s sound. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sound from anywhere in the word. Take note, consonance is repetition of consonant sound. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sound. Example: breeze through leaves, serene and free, Eve's sweet ease beneath the trees. What vowel sound stood out in these lines? Correct, the long E sound. Now, onomatopoeia is when words sound like the noise being described. Example: the hiss of snake, the buzz of bee. Hiss is the sound of snake. Buzz is the sound of bee. Can you think of any other onomatopoeia examples? Let us move on to another element. Figurative language. Figurative language add depth, nuance, and emotion to poetry by going beyond literal meanings. The common figurative languages used in a poem are simile, metaphor, personification, and hyperbole. Simile is the use of as or like in comparing two different things. For example, his voice was like a soothing lullaby. His voice is being compared to a lullaby using the word like. This means that his voice and the lullaby both have soothing and calming sounds. Metaphor is a direct comparison of two unlike things without the use of like or as. Example: her laughter was a cascade of golden sunlight. Her laughter is being compared to a golden sunlight warming the hearts around her. Another figurative language is what we call as personification. Personification is when human traits and emotions are attributed to non-human objects, animals, or abstract concepts. Example: the wind whispered secrets through the trees, sharing stories of forgotten lands. The wind is personified using the words whispered secrets. Hyperbole involves exaggerated statements or claims not meant to be taken literally. For example, I am so hungry I could eat a horse. Here, the exaggeration highlights extreme hunger in a dramatic way. How about you? Can you think of a sentence using any of the figurative language we discussed? Very good, kids! Last element of poetry is the theme. The central idea, message, or underlying meaning of a poem is often expressed through recurring images, symbols, and motifs. But how do we identify the theme of a poem? Well, we look at the context. Poems often have biographical, historical, and sociocultural contexts because these contexts greatly influence the themes, styles, and messages of the poems. Biographical contexts includes the life experiences, backgrounds, beliefs, and personal history of the author. Understanding the writer's biography can provide insights into the motivations, emotions, and perspectives behind the poem. This context may influence the theme, subject, and style of the writer. Personal experiences often shape the themes and emotions explored in poetry, making biographical context crucial for understanding the writer's perspective and creative process. Historical context refers to the time, events, social conditions, and cultural movements in which the poem was written. Examining historical context helps reader understand how societal changes, political events, or cultural shifts may have influenced the poet's perspective and message. Sociocultural context refers to social, cultural, and ideological environment in which the poem is produced and received. Sociocultural context includes factors such as societal norms, values, beliefs, traditions, and cultural identities. This context may influence the themes, symbols, language choices, and interpretation of the poem, as well as how the poem is received and understood by different audience. Let me ask you, why do you think it is important to know the basic elements of a poetry? Why do you need to determine the context of a poem? How will this help you? What will happen if you have a clear distinction of each basic elements of a poetry? Now that you learn the basic elements of a poetry that will help you analyze a poem, look for a partner and analyze the poem Last Love by J.D. Mariposa. And please be guided by the table. Great job, kids! You all did well. Congratulations!